Welcome. Today is special. On a journey that we started 6 months ago, we've had 24 guests telling us about their career histories. It's been an amazing journey because we've had so many varied stories. People who have done yoga, archaeologists, BPO managers, lawyers, and teachers, counselors. It's amazing as to the number of careers that people can have. But all of those careers were had wonderful moments of understanding, of defeat, of victory, and it was a look back. So for the 25th episode, Deepa Ravi, Jayachandran, and I decided that we're going to flip the equation. Instead of looking at what a career has been, we said we'd look at young people who are poised on the threshold of an exciting career. We have three young, enthusiastic, and extremely accomplished, even at this young age, guests on the show. And I'll bring them on one by one. Okay. First, Deepika Ganesh. Hi, Deepika.
Hi, Venu. So good to be here.
And you have decided that you're going to look at education for sustainable development. Okay. It's a wonderful role to follow. And there's obviously going to be a lot that we're talking about in this whole thing. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Aryaman Harish. Hi, Aryaman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I think this is going to be super exciting. Can't wait to hear what everyone has to say.
And Aryaman is into data analytics and visualization. And he's going to tell us how he sees his career unfold.
Yeah.
And finally, hi, Aditi. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Venu Uncle. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to this episode.
Yeah. So Aditi is looking at a future in immunology, and she has an unusual combination in her education. She did economics and by what is the molecular sciences, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which seemed like this is one of the things that I find is really interesting about what young people do, that they are not confined by one single subject. They're combining things because that's ultimately how the world is going to be. It's not going to be about one particular subject or one particular this thing. So, Deepika, why don't you tell us how this interest began?
I think going far back, most of my interests have been mostly knowing what I did not want to do more than what I did want to do. Because, like, I feel like schooling is so prescriptive for us, and that we're given a certain set of choices. So I've mostly been, like, oh, I don't really want to do this, I don't really want to do that. So I think it was a very, like, basic interest for me that I'm really interested in spending time in the outdoors. I enjoy going on hikes, and I enjoy being a student. So it was just, it was my own curiosities, I think, that sort of steered me in this direction. And yeah, a telling moment that you also had mentioned in my bio for me was I had done my master's thesis at this tiny village called Mangalajodi in Orissa, and it was a very interesting setup there. Like, we had it was a village ran on bird watching, and it used to be a place that was really infamous as a poaching village. And there was actually an IS officer who grew up there, who came back, worked with his community, and got them to change their livelihood. So I think in that, like, for me, stood out the power of, like, education, who is giving you the education, and how it operates in spaces outside of school and college. So yeah.
Great. So, Ariman, how did you get into data or analytics? What was the guiding force?
There was no guiding force, honestly. What I decided to study economics because I did commerce in 11th and 12th in India. And I realized that I didn't want to do the sciences, the pure sciences, very early on. But when I thought about my future, I didn't see a clear path. So I thought the safe option would be to get a STEM degree. And for someone who has studied commerce in 11th and 12th, economics is like the only choice left. Which it's
Okay.
still a STEM subject, but it's considered a STEM subject, but it's not pure STEM. So I decided, okay, I've eliminated the pure sciences. Let's jump on this bandwagon. Didn't think too much, just went ahead. And then when I started my economics degree, I realized, oh, this is too theoretical. This I can't apply this in any way. The tools that it's equipping me with are useful, but how do I take this and make a career for myself? And I said, okay, you know what now? And then I saw some core skills in the degree that could be translated to data analytics. So I took what I
Okay.
was learning in the classroom and I tried to gain some skills in data analytics, and that paved the way for some internships. So honestly, it wasn't a planned thing. It was very one thing after the other. Okay, like Deepika said, eliminate a bunch of things to come to something, and then you keep going one step from the other.
One step
Honestly,
to the
not
other.
planned at all. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ariman. Okay. So, Aditi, any sudden moments of revelations, or was it, like they said, a progress towards a kind of career that you want to
Yeah,
work on?
there seems to be a common thread here in that you figure out what you don't like, and that steers you towards something you're good at, you do like. So it was kind of similar for me, wherein so I spent most of my life thinking that I would do medicine. A majority of my family are doctors, so there's always medicine chatter in the house, and I was never interested in much else. And biology fascinated me, and cut to 11th 12th grade, which I did science in 11th and 12th in India. I somehow figured that I wanted to break free, and I didn't want to do what I had structurally planned to do for the last decade. And kind of in reaction to that structure, I said, I want everything but structure. So I did a liberal arts and sciences degree. And I just chose subjects that I thought, we'll take one class, see how it goes. If it interests me and it sticks, fantastic. So molecular cell biology was something that I'd always been interested in, and I'd studied it a bit in high school. And economics, funnily enough, I read a book called Freakonomics by Levitt
Okay.
and Dubner. And, I thought the class came up, there was a free spot. So I said, okay, great, let's join. And that kind of followed through for the next 3 years, and I majored in it. Now, have I found a way to conflate the two subjects? We can explore that a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of how things just happened. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. So, what I'm getting here is that, again, uh, Deepika, coming back to you, did your parents have a lot to say about the kind of career, or they they left it to you to decide what you wanted to do?
I think, yeah, I've been lucky in that I'm pretty sure at many points they didn't really understand what I was doing. I didn't really understand what I was doing, but then they trusted me, and yeah, I mean I don't know what else to say. I'm sure they still, because sometimes they still ask me. They like, somebody's asking us what you're doing. Can you just quickly tell us? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. And I'll send them across a quick text.
But I'm
So
interested in knowing, what is education for sustainable development? Uh, why is it not education alone? Why do the two have to be linked?
they don't have to be, but I think
Hmm.
I mean, at least now, for everyone who's studying, the climate crisis is essential,
Right.
and it's essential to all fields, irrespective of whether you're working with finance or IT. Like, I was just reading yesterday about how the cost of, I mean, the energy use of Bitcoin mining is more than like all the Amazon offices across the world put together. So, when we're faced with these kind of challenges, I think that's why I find this space critical, and that the connection also makes sense.
I saw a little, news item about Bitcoin. Can you imagine what consumes more than Bitcoin mining? It's very obvious. Once you know what the answer is, it's YouTube.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, okay,
YouTube's
that
data,
makes sense.
YouTube's data centers actually use up, and very carefully, the very next day after that graph was published on BBC, the top half of the graph which showed what was being the highest, this thing was actually taken off, and it started with Bitcoin. So you
Oh.
get to hear a lot about what Bitcoin is all about in this thing. But okay, Aravind, to come back to you, one of the things that you said was that you did this project to figure out, tell producers what Netflix, how did people like certain movies on Netflix, or was that part of a team that you worked with?
Uh,
How did you arrive at gathering data, and what was your source data for working on a project like that?
So I took this course in university. It was called data visualization and it was a course that the information systems school offered. And so for that course, we had to build an interactive dashboard, and
Okay.
we had to build this in Tableau, which is a very widely used tool for visualization in the industry. And we thought to ourselves, okay, um, where do we get the data to do this? Because we want to create multiple types of visualizations, communicate different types of insights across different KPIs. And so we found data on Kaggle, Kaggle is a very commonly used data analytics and data science learning platform. And we found this public data set on Kaggle where they'd scraped data from Netflix of all the different movies across different years.
Okay.
And then we linked that data to financial data we had about Netflix's revenue in different markets. And then once we were able to link it and find a join, we created different visualizations and made it sort of interactive. So you could play around with the years, with the genres, to sort of see how certain things are looking in certain markets. So it
Okay.
was a fun thing for us. It was more of a project that we finished, and then we sent a mail to Netflix saying, "Hey, we did this." Um,
Okay.
but we didn't work with Netflix really, but it was just really it was something we were interested in, because a lot of
Okay.
indie producers want to pitch to Netflix, but they don't necessarily
Right.
have information. So that's what we were
Right.
working on.
Great. So, Aditi, in your course, was it a 50-50 kind of, split between economics and molecular cell biology, or what was the mix like, and how did you manage the credits for both of them?
So it wasn't a 50-50 split by any means. I actually started off with biology and physics. And
Okay.
physics kind of led me to economics at some point. And there's a lot of similarities between physics and economics, which is why I think I found the transition pretty easy. So with the degree I got, it's a little bit of a lot. So I did a bit of linguistics. I had a random gastronomy course that I did. So I think overall the credits were mainly in biology and economics, but there was a lot interspersed between languages as well. I think the idea is, with a degree like this, is to give you a fairly broad foundation as opposed to a very deep understanding of a particular subject, which
Okay.
is a common joke with people who've done the liberal arts and sciences, which is I can simultaneously do everything but nothing, So which is why I think I took a year off after university to still explore after that.
Okay.
I agree with
Sorry, I
others.
think I lost you for a little, but that connection you made, economics and physics, similarities. Can you just expand a bit on that?
Sure. Yeah. I believe there's some amount of economics that was derived from physics. So, example, the concept of elasticity in physics
Okay.
and economics is very similar, apply to very different things. But so there are those few key parallels. And I did microeconomics specifically, so it's very math based which is similar to physics. It's
Okay.
applied math, and so is economics. I'm sure Aryaman can touch upon that as well.
Um,
Okay.
the base essentially when you're learning micro and macro is you need to know multivariate calculus, some amount of
Right.
multivariate calculus. And so I guess maths can sort of help you find the common intersection. And there's also a lot of linear regression. And if you're going on the applied side, there's a lot of linear and multiple variable regression stats models that you use that could
Okay.
apply to other domains as well. So the methods could be similar, but the domains may be different, sort of where we're applying things. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So, Deepika, I think one of the things you mentioned is that you worked on this big, massively open online MOOC
Yeah.
for what was that about? What exactly did you do there?
That was, I think that's what I think cemented my interest in research, or that's what kind of moved me here. Is I was working at the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore in their online learning department. So I used to design these massive open online courses, MOOCs,
Okay.
as they are known, for sustainable development. So it was both inward and outward facing. So we would have MOOCs that anyone in the world could sign up for, and we also did like blended learning programs that other faculty wanted to take up, or others that students wanted to take up at the institute. And yeah, one interesting project that I did was we designed this MOOC to sort of aim to decentralize business curriculum, or like include perspectives from different states and different countries. Like with most, I don't know, we're all familiar with how, like, in most of our, I guess, things that we've studied, they're not really grounded and rooted in our own surroundings. So
Okay.
we try to bring that into business curriculum by having a program where faculty could develop cases from their own states or their own localities, like identify a challenge and write about it and include it in the in the curriculum that we were publishing. So that was an interesting project that happened in 2018.
And sorry, and was that live? Were these the same? I mean, all of these courses, the MOOCs are. What is the method of delivery?
So the MOOC is yes, the MOOCs are all online. We used to use Open edX. I don't work there anymore. So, and I know that edX was bought by another company called 2U. So I'm not too
Okay.
sure where they're hosted now. But yeah, you would find them online. The course that I worked on was called Strategy and the Sustainable Enterprise. Was called Strategy and the Sustainable Enterprise. So yeah, anyone can sign up for it, and it's free unless you want a certificate from the course.
Okay. I think those are some of the challenges, right? In terms of today, you're free to do a whole lot of courses, but in terms of does it help to get your job? Because some of the clients we work with, the people who want to come and join them are only asking one question: is this going to lead me to a job? So I
Yeah.
think a few of you have this. I'm not saying it's not just an opportunity; it's also an awareness and a realization that you need to spend the early part of your life building a foundation of at least some of the things that you know you want to be involved in for the next 10 or 15 years. Some people don't have that flexibility. It's almost as if they have to try and figure out. So I'm saying if your choices were limited, I'm going to, make it a bit of a difficult thing out here. I'm going to ask each of you in turn, if you were forced into certain situations where you didn't have the ability to do what you wanted, have you ever considered that? Any one of you can go. Deepika?
Yeah, I feel like that happens to me all the time. So, I mean, even very recently, when I just started, like my first project as a PhD student, I'm working with an engineering department, and I have to read a case on ammonia production. I haven't done engineering, so I don't know. I feel like what you said is a disadvantage is also an advantage. I think is our access to information. I think if you have a willingness to learn, we can probably learn about everything. And I think also viewing like the spaces that we learn in as spaces of networking, at least the physical spaces, and like knowledge we can access anywhere. But the university that we attend, or like people that we meet as people who can teach us, because I do have someone who's teaching me now about the decarbonizing of ammonia production. And
Right,
it's going to
right.
take me a while to figure out the vocabulary, but yeah, hopefully I get there.
Okay. Arun, what do you
Um,
think?
I think I think all of us are a fairly privileged bunch of people here who have had the choice to, choose things that we like studying or at least have some remote interest in. But very often, many people don't have the choice to choose what they study or where they work. Sometimes it's just about making ends meet, trying to get from one step to the other. But I found that even even from people who are in those situations, people who maybe their parents have forced them to study engineering because that's the norm in
Yeah,
India,
that's
which is
usually the, yeah,
that's the
norm.
norm. Yes, um, I see an urge and a willingness to not let the academic constraints that society has subjected upon them to stray them away from their core interest. I think academics is no longer a boundary, and what you study for 4 years in your bachelor's degree or your 2 years in your master's is not a determinant of what you want to do in the future. It's about what you want to do. And I feel this especially for applied domains where
Okay.
the skill can be acquired with time and effort or work experience, that we don't need to be constrained by what we study. A society will tell us that we should be constrained by that. But if we have an interest and a strong passion, we should not let that stop us. And I'm a strong proponent of that because I feel like the job market is evolving rapidly. Jobs that are there today will not be there 2-3 years from now.
Right,
The tools we are using today are not going to be there 2-3 years from now. The things that they taught us in school might become irrelevant, but
right.
what we need to take away is some core skills and try and keep them close to us, I think. Yeah, I don't know if
Great.
that makes sense, but
It does. It does. Because, like you said, the change is something that's happening at a much more rapid rate. So the solutions that applied, let's say, even a decade ago may not be relevant today.
yeah.
Aditi, what has your experience been? Or, in terms of, okay, if you thought you were constrained, what would your options have been?
So, yeah, reflecting what Aryaman said, I think I've also always been aware of the privileges I've been given, the privilege of choosing, the privilege of picking what I would like to do and then discarding what I didn't. If I was backed into a corner, let's say grade 12, I think I would have done medicine.
Okay.
But to give you a little anecdote, along the same vein. So I worked in HR for a few months last year, and I was a recruiter. So I ended up talking to a lot of people, interacting with a lot of people from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, and a sort of common thread that I found with the interviews I did was that as long as you were willing to learn outside of the box a little bit compared to, let's say, what you've gotten your degree in, anything is
Right.
possible. So I saw people who'd come with engineering degrees who were doing HR alongside me, or very rarely the opposite. You need a certain skill set for an engineering
Yeah.
job, but it really showed me that you don't have to be constrained by what you were forced to do in your earlier years. And I think, so I'm going to my master's now in a few months, and I think that's the beauty of a master's, because when I got out of my bachelor's, the world was my oyster. I didn't know what I was going to do, but then a master's kind of helps you refine that, do something entirely different. So in terms of being constrained, I think that's more a mindset than
Okay.
anything else. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think that's one of the great things that I'm seeing is that you guys are so clear about. I don't think my generation, which is at least three generations removed, was had anything close to the clarity that you have today. And at times I wonder if that is a process of conditioning. You've got so used to having so much of information right from the beginning that your mind almost acts like a filtration mechanism and then says this no, this no, this no. In fact, I had written recently, I think, that even the scrolling seems to be like a filter, because the mind is telling you move. This is not important to you, as opposed to it being a reflex. Okay. But Deepika, just to come back, do you see this whole thing about, do you think there's too much being made about planning your career and what you should be doing, as opposed to saying do what you think you'll be good at and let it evolve from there?
I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just gonna rely on, yeah, my own experience. And actually, for a while, Venu uncle, I thought I should tell you that I did work with career counseling. I mean, I used to design programs on gender and sustainability, but I worked with an organization that used to do career counseling in schools. And I'm just gonna look back at my experience there, and I think so much of it is an autonomous decision that we need to be empowered to make. And I feel like that's really missing in how our schools operate, because we always have people telling us what to do. And I'm not saying that, in a way to vilify, families or
Mm,
schools,
mm.
because they all have our best in interest in heart. But
Right.
very rarely do we have the capacity to come up with an original thought, or to even reflect and see what our interests are. And I feel like the process of reflection should be embedded in this process, like from an early age. If we're able to sit with ourselves and understand what we like to do, I think either way it will make it, even if it's like, you figure it out as you go, or I want to become an economist, so this is how I get there. I feel like reflecting and having the tools to be able to like plan that out would make it easier. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we have a couple of comments that have come up. It's not so much a question, so I'll just show it to you. Okay, so obviously that resonated. So Ravi says that the sustainability part is simple, but they have become so complex. You were just talking of decarbonization and all the credits and all the jargon that seems to evolve faster than the field itself, you
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
which come
Yeah.
out there. And academics and practically working, quite a big gap, I guess. Yeah. But okay, Ariman, yeah, the same question that I asked Deepika. How do you see this, playing out? Let's say I'm not even asking for a 5 year horizon. I'm saying maybe over the next couple of years. Where do you see the value in data visualization from a commercial viewpoint? I'm just asking, is that something that you would look at, or you'd say, let me figure out as I go along?
Data visualization is something that is useful in all areas of business. From speaking from a corporate sort of perspective, you use it in finance, you use it in marketing, you use it in HR, you use it everywhere, right? There are KPIs that managers need to track, and they need to sort of report, and sort of, if their visualizations are too complex and they're hard to read, and sort of managers sort of has only 10 minutes to go through things, then you've lost the plot, right? So it's not
Okay.
just about knowing about different types of graphs, or knowing about different types of data. It's not just about that, but it's a form of communication, because words are not good enough. Even if you have gone through so much information, you've read through tables of data, gone through rows of Excel, right? When you're communicating to a stakeholder, and you're using a visual medium, you need some graphs, right? And it's like a principal communication mechanism. So you need to figure out the cues, colors, size, angle, you know, and ensure that you're communicating what is appropriate. So actually, a lot of applied psychology comes into this, because we need to
Okay.
understand the attention span of individuals, what insight they will capture first. Very often, in Excel, you could make these 3D graphs, I don't know if you have
Mm.
ever noticed, but you could make
Right.
these graphs. They are actually the worst type of graph to make because you're communicating too much at once.
Okay.
No one can figure out what is going on in three
Yeah.
dimensions, So things like this, psychology tells us, that
Yeah.
you're overdoing
Yeah.
it, boss. Press the pause button, right?
Yeah.
So I think I
Yeah.
see this as something fundamental. Maybe the platform will change. Maybe instead of Tableau, you're using Power BI. Maybe AI will come in and make the visualizations for you, taking the
Simpler.
data.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right.
But still, you need to know why, how, when, um, to make the appropriate choice.
Okay.
So that's fundamental. Yeah.
Great. I think that's valid. Aditi, what about you? What do you think?
What do I think about where the field I'm in,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
where I
The
see
field you're
myself?
in and how it's going to pan out in future. And are you looking far ahead, or are you saying next couple of years, I'll figure out things as I go along because I will get to know more. One of the good things I think you've done is you earlier mentioned that you did HR for a while before you got into your current Encure, which
Yes.
again gave you a set of experiences that may not have been exactly like Deepika said when she went and talked to as a career counselor. You get a set of experience. So, what's your take right now?
So I look at everything in life. I was given some very good advice only a few months ago. I look at everything in life, career wise at least, as a project. So the HR stint was a project. Before that, project. And it gives me an end, not to look forward to, but sort of goals to achieve within a certain period of time. And very often I've heard friends of mine complaining, oh, I don't know how people do this, I'm bored, how do people stay at one job for 20, 30 years, brings into question loyalty and things like that. But I think the idea of looking at something as a project really gives you a sense of perspective. So, to answer your question, where do I see myself in this field? I don't know. I'm doing a master's in a similar field, immunology, and potentially I will come back to this. So the company, maybe I can explain what my company does. We're a startup in Bangalore, and it's based around the idea of creating a cancer immunotherapy, cell-based immunotherapy. The cell in question would be the NK cell, natural killer cell, NCure. So where I see this field going, there's extremely exciting science going on. The incubator that I'm at in Bangalore, CCAM, Center for Molecular Platforms, there's so much going on, and I want to take part in every single project. Every single startup is trying to achieve such different things and such necessary things. So there's, I think, a lot in this field, and I think a lot is going to be available specifically for Indian customers, for Indian patients. Drugs that are not typically, or therapies that aren't typically accessible in terms of finances to the Indian consumer base. People are working on that daily. My company is working on that. So where I fit into this, I don't know. I can tell you for the next 6 months, the next year, we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Okay, great. But one of the things, just looking at two different. On one side, we see that the world is moving much faster towards climate. You can call it an apocalypse because of the way media shows it. And on the other, we seem to be developing these technologies that we could never have dreamt of in terms of curing people, in terms of health. Do you think at some point this whole thing is, it's a question of a race as to who will win? Because if you don't have a planet, it doesn't matter. At the same time, if you have the planet, how is it that you're going to improve life? Because at some point I think it's going to be a, what's your take, Deepika?
There's so many layers to this, uncle. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing that both Aditi and Aryaman mentioned is, who has the privilege to access this technology, or like life saving or not, or we know that Elon Musk is going to move to Mars, in case all of this does happen. So, I mean, I have no answer to your question, But I don't know. I think it's nice to. I was actually seeing the connection when Aditi was talking about the cancer, and Ariman was talking about the visualization. I actually attended a conference where someone has developed this dashboard in which you can regulate the dosage of medicine depending on a person's race and gender and age. And these are
Yeah.
these are advancements that, and this was at an education conference which was under
Okay.
the theme of compassion. So he developed this dashboard to educate nurses, the person. So I think it's just so nice to see the kind of humanitarian way in which anything could work. So, maybe the planet is good after all, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Arvind, what's your take? These two things
Um,
on one side.
it's a very existential theme, and when we enter these existential themes, I'm sort of I don't know what to say, but I will say this. I think that we need to look at horizons differently. I think that when our countries gained independence, there would be these 5-year plans in sort of this
Yeah.
Nehruvian era. They would have these 5-year plans for growth, and they would sort of set about allocating resources to different industries, based on their idea of how much this industry should grow or how much. So they've planned it all out, and they know they move with the assumption that they know what's coming. But history has proven that we
Yeah.
don't know what's coming,
We
and
don't know what's coming. Yeah.
yeah, we don't know what's coming at all. COVID-19 is proof that we really don't know what's coming. So I think you try to do your best, you try to move in a direction which you want to move, but you shouldn't expect things to work out. I think this is something that's very important in our careers, in our lives in general. I think we can't expect things to work out. We can't expect our choices and our risks to sort of lead to gains. Things may
Yeah.
work out sometimes, they might not work out the others. We need to have some backup options, some backup plans, a third route, a fourth route, because
Yeah.
uncertainties are abundant, and they're going to come our way. They're going to continue to come our way. And if today is uncertain, tomorrow is going to be 10 times more uncertain. So I think the
True.
attitude should be, don't expect things to work out. If they work out, great. If not, our effort is itself enough. And I think that
Okay.
that mindset is important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's being very practical. And Aditi, I think you just mentioned, so 2 years when you went away to study and then you
Mhm.
came back. When you went to study, these projects didn't exist in India. At least I don't think it existed as far as you knew, but the work was going on. But it's only now that you've seen it happen. So at some point earlier, the thing used to be that, it'll only be in the West that something will happen. But today you're beginning to see that even in India, that process has started, even if it's not moved into high gear. Because, electronic vehicles, Ather, the kind of two-wheelers that we have, they put in 8 years of work on the battery. Because they said, okay, if it's going to go into something like this, then I want to ensure that we it meets all Indian conditions. So you could have 45 degrees in a certain place and you can't have the battery catch fire, which is your basic premise. Okay. So do you solve for whatever is directly in front of you? Or, sometimes these plans are like Ariman was saying, 5 years, leave alone 5 years, even the next couple of years is uncertain.
That's a very interesting question. Um, in a nutshell, I used to be someone who planned many, many years ahead, had a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, so on and so forth. But I
Okay.
don't think I am that person anymore, only because I've learned that that's not a sustainable way to live. And to kind of touch upon what Deepika and Ariman said as well, I really loved the positivity and the realism they brought in to this conversation, because I think it's important to be, as much as you have to be realistic, it is important to be positive. Because I was reading an article the other day where it said that reading an article heading with bad news is something people click on more regarding the environment, that is, click on more, as opposed to good news. So
Right.
I think the idea of, this apocalyptic mentality, the world's on fire, sometimes literally, uh, that's okay to pass through and kind of digest, and then you do your little things to help the planet, or big things like Deepika's doing with education. um, and that's what I try to do, tackle small projects 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. And in terms of year-long plans, I've set that aside, I've put that to bed. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so here's something that I think is meant for all of you. So, Deepika, why don't you go with this? Tell me
This is
what you
not my
think.
first job, though. So should I reflect on my first
Okay,
job?
when your first job, okay, the question is that it's going back to the time you had your
My
first
okay.
job.
Okay. Yeah, I
Because
mean, I'm
the thing is, there's always an expectation, and it's more about what was the mentality when you had your first job
yeah.
versus now you have advanced a few years into it. So, what has changed?
Things have changed so much, and I think also this is something important that I thought that Aryaman brought up. Of now I understand and recognize the value of starting building a skill earlier, like irrespective of which field you're in. And I think, yeah, when I was in my first job, I didn't really have much of a clue, what I was doing. I was fresh out of my 3 year degree from Mount Carmel College. I think I was one of two people who sat for campus placements because everyone else did, did not even, I don't know, want to do that. And then,
Okay.
yeah, and my first job was very accidentally at KPMG in knowledge management. And yeah, like I think I just intentionally went with that. And that's where like I started writing cases on sustainable development. And I'm able to recognize that looking back now. But at the time, I think I was just intentional about, okay, I'm writing cases. Okay, let me, build my writing skills. Let me build my presentation skills. And I'm glad things have added up and I'm doing much more interesting things now. But yeah,
Yeah. No, that's great. I think that's really um, the way you kind of, because at each stage when you cross a certain time, you spend a couple of years and then you get, uh, it's almost like you're adjusting your rear view mirror and then saying,
yeah,
okay,
absolutely. Yeah,
this is the road in front, but I
yeah.
also need to see what I've gone past to see what I'll need to do in future.
And I
Okay,
think that's quite
Ariman, what?
humbling also to see it that way. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, 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 absolutely. I think that's valid. And please feel free to cut it, because I think the whole point is, if you think that that point is important, please state it because it's important to get that into the conversation. Yes, Ariman.
My first significant job was I worked for 4 months in a health tech company in Singapore, and I was working in growth and partnerships. And this company was it was a startup, and sort of they worked in health in developing countries to get access to medicines, etc., in rural areas. But I was working in Singapore in their HQ. My mindset going into this job was, okay, this is an internship. It was a very Indian mindset I had of, okay, my boss will give me some tasks. I will complete those tasks at the end of the day, submit it to the boss, and I'll go home. This was sort of like, okay, I'll come into work, do my tasks, and leave. Come and do the work, leave. This was sort of the mindset I had. It's an internship. I was in my second year in university, at the end of my first year in university. So I really didn't expect it to be crazy or tough. But when I walked
Okay.
into the startup and I was interacting directly with the CEO and the CFO, and there was work that was crazy because they were preparing for their next funding round, I was expected to take ownership of tasks that I had never thought in the wildest of dreams that I'd have to take ownership for.
Okay.
Interact with stakeholders directly, talk to partners in other countries, do things that I had never expected I should do. And that was very unexpected for me. Very, very unexpected for me. So therefore, that that really sort of taught me that, you know, I have to move from a mindset of tasks, or sort of to a mindset of ownership, where
Right.
I feel I am working for the organization and I am invested in the organization's growth. Because a shift in the mindset leads to a difference in your output. Um,
Right.
it's it's behind at the back of your head, but it makes a difference. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Very true. Aditi, what is your experience like? Your
Yeah,
very first
very
job? Yeah.
very similar to Aryaman. So my first job would have been HR at
Yeah.
it's a cancer hospital called Side Care Cancer Hospitals,
Okay.
and I've had a few internships during university, and I approached everything as I am doing this for someone else. The only person benefiting is me, and suddenly I was with a group of people, a team of people, and I had the hospital to keep in mind, the ethos of the hospital's image, to the patients, to admin, to staff, so on and so forth. So that was definitely a shift, including, I mean, this is very superficial, but in a lot of these internships I made friends. At this HR job, I had colleagues. So drawing that line for me was a very conscious one. And it took me some time to realize that. But specifically, and I think this is potentially just a quirk of HR and recruitment, but I learned a lot of empathy. But also a little bit more backbone. Uh, Funnily enough, the first day I was there, the second day I was there, they made me reject a couple of candidates. And I came home and I wept because, I had never done something like this before. To reject someone, to say no to someone, was something I had never done before in a professional capacity. And these are people's livelihoods. And I had to realize that it wasn't me doing the rejection, it was the hospital. So definitely a lot of lessons learned that first job.
Yeah. No, I can imagine how if you have to move from getting yourself into a job to telling others that they didn't have one.
Yes,
Because I've had
exactly.
this entire conversation with a career counselor in one of the earlier episodes where Usha said it was largely between, management issues of people not getting along, or people thinking that they had a certain skill and the company then wanted to let go of them, and she would be brought in exactly at that point where how do you manage this in the shortest time possible? It's not easy. And especially when the person thinks that they've either kept the job or they think that they're going to be rewarded, which is maybe they grow up very fast after that, because I think once they get into that rejection mode, they're not going to be taking anything for granted later on. So, okay, we've gone over a fair amount of stuff, though I think we meandered because the whole idea was not to say that this is my career, but this is to say this is a career. And these are the things, that perspectives that I bring in based on what I've done, what I've learned, and the same. So, going forward, if you had to advise your parents on how they should be looking at, I mean, you started this with the premise saying that you have understanding parents, you have people who allowed you to do what they wanted, but I'm sure when you were in HR or when you were in counseling, Deepika, you would have come across people who told you that no, my parents. So if you had to tell parents what is it that they should be letting their children do, where would you begin?
This is such an interesting and also such a challenging question because, like you said, I think even when we were growing up is very different to how students are in school now. And the kind of information that they access, a lot of it could be nonsense, you know? So, um, I think my appeal would be to the ecosystem because it's very difficult for just parents to take the onus. I would hope that schools would step up and also like everyone could have professional career counseling in that not that oh you should build these skills or you should do that, but to serve as guides and to serve as informed guides. So yes, I hope that parents would serve as informed guides or at least get their children access to people who can help them get the tools to make decisions. Because I mean, 16, 17, we're making crucial decisions at that age. And, like, I feel like I can't make crucial decisions now. So, yeah.
No, and believe me, it doesn't get easier.
Okay. That's assuring.
Okay. No, if that's any consolation. So I'm saying one of these things are because sometimes you say there's always this I wish I had. But I'm saying those
Yeah,
are almost at a certain point you learn not to look at that aspect of the whole thing because you
absolutely.
have a certain thing that you're doing here and now. Okay. Ariman, what do you think? What do you think
I
you should be
face
telling
this
parents?
issue very often. I face this issue very often where I'm trying to convince my parents that, the choices I'm making are good choices. Very often they question the choices I make. And so, it comes from a place of concern, but I think parents have certain preconceived notions, based on how their careers panned out,
Right.
and it's not wrong. Their advice is valid in the zone and time and place in which they experience things. But today choices are much more. Number one, it's you don't have to be a CA, a doctor. It's no longer like that. I think there are other paths, other jobs that are remunerative. May not may not be the type of career trajectory that you imagine. There is this idea of a career trajectory in Indian parents' minds, which is exponential. You know that people will keep going from one thing to the other, but in reality, I don't think it works like that. You spend some time exploring some things, figuring out where you're headed before you take a leap. So I think
Yeah.
when negotiating with your parents, and you have to take the front seat. You have to tell them, listen, it's my life. At the end of the day, I'm the person driving the car. I'm the person taking this forward. Tomorrow you may not be here. What then?
Right.
This is very important. You need to say, I need to be 100% invested in the choices I make. um you know and if that is the situation I'm in, even if it doesn't work out, I'm willing to accept the consequences, but
Okay.
because it's a risk I decided to take. So I think while dealing with parents, you have to take a mindset of negotiation. You have to say, give me 1 year, give me 2 years, let me figure this out. Let me try this option out. If it doesn't work out, I will come back to the beaten path.
Right.
I can come back to the beaten path, but give me an opportunity to explore something different. Have faith, have trust in me.
Right.
I think this is
No,
important.
I think it's very sensible. I think it's one of those things where I think one of the things that really came through in what you were saying is how parents are getting into a protective mode. It's not just advisory, it's because their personal experience has been a certain way. They feel that I don't want you to endure what I endured, which at times is almost like a this thing because you have to endure certain things. You can only there is one university which I believe the University of Experience, which you can't decide when you want to enroll and when you want to graduate. It's one of those things that happens. Aditi, what's your take? What would you tell?
So I'm at a point in my life where a lot of my older cousins, older friends are having kids now. So there's a bunch of babies in the family. And so this is a question I've been, pondering for the last how many ever years. And I would say two things mainly. One, notice what your children are curious about, right? Because that can come at age 4, that can come at age 24. But I think figuring out what your child is fascinated by, really dipping into that curiosity, and then allowing them to explore that in whatever means necessary, buying them a book, an internship, a little, I don't know, whatever have you. So I think that would be a fantastic thing that I would hope my cousins do for their kids. And second would be to, when they're older, maybe to instill this differentiation between what can be a career and what is a hobby, because both are things that affect your adult life a lot. I've had to make that own distinction. I still continue to make it for myself, and I think I will continue to. But I have a lot of experience in following things that are hobbies, realizing that, oh, wait, I kind of hate this now, pulling back, and then figuring something else out. And I think that's an important distinction to have. So to allow your child to explore those options, fail potentially, and then come back and start from, ground zero, step one, I think that's important.
Wonderful. I hope the parents listening will, for once, you know, understand that their children are no longer children. There's a certain stage in life when you say that, yes, I've seen this child from birth, and then they've grown up, and there's a point at which you need to really look at them through fresh eyes. And I guess that's the point at which parents themselves will develop a new understanding. Wow, it's almost an hour. I didn't believe that since we've been chatting. So it's been wonderful talking to all of you. And any final thoughts that you want to sort of close out on, Deepika? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I really just want to acknowledge a point that Aryamanati just brought up about, you know, knowing that you probably are going to fail, that some of your decisions are going to be bad, and taking comfort in the fact that your parents will support you. Like I think that's something that is so essential for all of us. Like if our parents are not going to support us, then who are? Like, I mean, of course we have friends and
Yeah,
other networks, but this
right,
is like such a
right.
crucial and important network. So yeah, so I hope for everyone to have really supportive parents who are okay with them failing and coming back, and having to start from scratch.
Wonderful. Ariman?
I'm at this weird juncture in my life where I'm graduating soon and I don't have a job in hand. I'm applying for jobs, I'm still figuring it out. And I can tell you it's very scary to be in this place in life because you think there is this idea that after a job, after you study, you will get a job. But there is this limbo in between where you're still figuring things out. In India, I feel many people have this opportunity of campus placements, so maybe they don't feel this limbo. But but I feel that this limbo teaches you a couple of things. So I encourage everyone, whoever is in this limbo, to use the time to, number one, introspect on what you want to do. Number two, try and hone up, try and refine the skills that you've acquired. Brush the dust off, and you thought you knew it, but maybe you don't. So go back to it and try and relearn. And take this time in between two major phases of your life to um, to prepare for the next journey,
Right.
mentally, physically, because for people who have never worked before in their life, it is 8 9 hours or maybe sitting in a chair. Maybe you get up for lunch, you get up for dinner. You need to be physically prepared for this. You need to ensure that you are ready, your back is not going to hurt. Be physically prepared. That's one tip I've been trying to prepare. Go out, walk a little, come back every day, and make that a regular part of your life. To be mentally prepared for the culture that might be different from what you're used to. Be ready
Right.
to adjust. And the last thing, don't, which I said earlier, don't expect things to work out. If they do, great. If they don't, we can come back to the drawing board again and again and again.
Yes.
That's what I want to say.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Ariman. Great. I think you picked it there. Aditi, what would you like to say in conclusion?
To follow up those really well spoken. So yeah, I thought about how I would like to end this podcast. First of all, thank you for having me on, Venu Uncle. This has
Okay.
been very interesting getting to listen to what you two have to say as well. Um, so, advice I was looking for when I left university a little less than a year ago that I ended up practicing was to get bored. So, if you're in limbo, like Aryaman mentioned,
Yeah.
get bored, stare at a wall, go into the forest, meditate a bit, get bored, and revitalize your interest or your curiosity in something that may have been lost along the way. University can have a peculiar effect of dimming any sort of interest that you had begun with. At least that was the case for me. So get bored, and you find your way eventually. That's what I'm telling myself at the very least. So yes, that's
It's
that's
true.
all I have to say.
Yeah. No, I think we all face this. We faced this a few generations ago. Our choices were limited, but the same fears, the same worry, the same lack of understanding from our parents, because when you tried to, in my case I was happy because I was able to get into advertising, which at that point was seen as, why would anyone want to work in advertising? But you know so thank you all. I mean, it's been an education, because one of the things that I expected was that um, you have your areas of where you'd want to improve, but I think you've got an extremely sound foundation, and I'm sure that you'll contribute in major ways in the years to come. Thank you
Thank you
for
so much.
being on the My First Job podcast, and it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you
Really
so
enjoyed
much.
listening to all of you.
Okay,
Thanks.
so I'll say bye bye and then closing remarks, and see you. All the best for the future.
Bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
This was an education as far as I was concerned. This is the first time we are talking to a younger generation, and what they had to say left me more of an optimist rather than someone worried about the future. They have such a clear idea of what they'd like to do. And at that point, let's leave it until next week.